Everyday Resonance does not provide psychotherapy or medical services and is not a substitute for these services. If you have or may have a psychological or medical condition, please see a licensed professional.
Hi, I'm Daniel Sunshine.
And I'm Elizabeth DeMorais.
That's right, and Elizabeth is here today. Priya is actually in India. So Elizabeth, I'm so grateful to have Elizabeth as the co-host on Everyday Resonance, where we really look at how we're bringing ourselves into the world. That is how we're resonating in the world. And really, it's a lot about this idea of like attraction, law of attraction, because how we resonate in the world is how the world resonates back with us. And so on Everyday Resonance, we look at being conscious of how we're making our choices in relation to that, and then how can we go through different ways of healing and finding new pathways to get out of the way of ourselves. Elizabeth often likes to put it that way, getting out of the way of ourselves so that we can bring our best self, our highest self into the world.
Definitely. And we have an amazing guest today. She's going to be speaking about how we access that higher self. And we're going to talk also about trauma resolution in terms of we so often can work from our pain points and our traumas from our past. She's going to be talking to us today about really how can we heal those. So I'm really excited about this conversation today.
That's right. Our guest is Linda Sprague. I'm super excited to announce Linda. Linda's been a major part of my own healing journey. Actually, she's helped me through some of the darkest nights that I've been through. Literally in the face of pitch darkness, Linda's helped me kind of find sparks so that I could cultivate renewed sense of self and well-being and get out of the way of myself in terms of trauma, that kind of thing. So Linda's certified in trauma resolution. She also utilizes tarot and astrology in her practices in actually very unique ways. She's been doing this for over 2 decades, so she weaves it in unique ways. She directed a school that's called Recreating Your Future, and she's helped countless people do just that through her programs called Soul CPR, as well as Gateways to Synchronicity, where she integrates Western astrology and tarot into her practice. So we'd really love to welcome Linda Sprague. There's
Hello,
Linda right
Linda.
there. So great to see you, Linda. So glad to have you on the show today.
Thank you, Daniel, and thank you, Elizabeth.
Oh.
It's wonderful to be here.
We love having you here. Thank you so much. Let's go right into our questions that we have for you. Are you good with that?
Sure.
All right. Well, my first question is, like I said, so many times we can be operating out of our pains and how we show up in the world. So if someone were to come to you, or when they do come to you, what is the first thing that you do with them in terms of taking them through that process of healing?
Of course, it depends on the person. It's always going to be a little different, but the first thing I want to do is listen
Nice.
and hear
Yeah, definitely.
whatever somebody wants to tell me so that we have some kind of launch pad to go from. I know that people have this great need to heal because they want to live in the present. And
Definitely.
that's the main thing. So if I only have one session, let's say somebody would come and they only can be with me one time, I would immediately want to write down what they're feeling, try to get them engaged and to write down words for them. This is what I'm feeling, so that they have some contact and can connect with actually what's going on in them in a feeling way rather than in their head. And then I want to know what they want. What do you want?
So you start with a series of questions for them,
Well,
guided by who they are, of course, from their
probably I would start, if I'm going to work with some long range, I'll start with the outline because the system I use is very simple and safe. But the overriding idea is that we have to get in touch with our insides. We have to get in touch with what we feel. Emotion is energy in motion. When we give words to it, we're identifying feelings. And as we move along, we find out that all feelings fully felt return to peace.
Love that, Linda. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So just wanted to jump in a little bit. So because you just said that, some really profound thoughts, especially the last one, which this idea of every feeling fully felt returns to peace. That in
Correct.
itself is such a profound statement. And Linda, it's influenced me tremendously throughout my healing process. And I want to just share with those that are listening now, we're so grateful for our audience that's been growing, as the program's been out there, people that are coming, maybe that are just opening up to this type of information because, life is super stressful, or they might be going through something, or those that are already along the path to, coming in. So thank you for showing up today. Thank you
Yes,
for
thank
bringing
you.
yourself to this. And I want to, mention that, Linda, in this conversation with you, we're really looking at these 3 keys to aligning with our highest self. And so Linda's already starting to touch on that. And we're going to walk down this path. And at the end of the program, we're going to really specifically identify what those are.
I'm excited to hear those.
And bring those to the audience. But as we're walking down this path, we'll be, sharing a lot of potent information. So every feeling fully felt returns to peace, stated from Linda Sprague. And I'm going to ask, because one of the big tenements of this program is this idea of healing ourselves so that we can be more in alignment with our inner being. And so, Linda, that makes me think of all the trauma work that you and I did together, not to go into that specifically, but to go into what is trauma. You bring up this feelings. And so how does trauma relate? If someone comes to you and they're deep in their trauma, what might they be exhibiting? What might they look like? What might they be saying if they're in their trauma and they haven't really started working through it yet?
Well, let's be a little more basic. First of all, trauma happens usually out of the blue and without a person's permission, and it throws them into shock. What it really does is it separates the self off from the self. So we're no longer who we thought we were. We no longer feel integrated. So that's part of the problem of trauma. And the longer it goes without any kind of treatment or being addressed or any tools for handling it, the more the person feels out of whack because we can't get connected to who we really are. So that's a fundamental thing we need to understand when we deal with trauma. So coming back to the self, that's why it's so important to emphasize the feeling part of it. We remember we have a left brain that's not going to forget anything that's happened. So we have to put that together with what the feelings are around that occurrence and how it's affecting our current life. Usually people will come to me because something's happened that's triggered off a memory or some kind of strategies or behaviors that went along with an old trauma. And they need to kind of like come back to grips here and get centered. And everybody, I think what I'd like to say, really, we talk about 3 things. People want to know who they are. And if you have trauma, you feel like you don't know who you are. You've kind of lost that thread. So that's the first thing. We want to know who we are because we're trying to get back to that special, what I call maybe eternal soul place that's in us. And that's been annihilated if we have trauma. So in getting back to that, we have certain tools. Of course, I have my soul CPR, but sometimes astrology is really helpful, particularly if it's trauma from childhood, because we've been told who we are rather than knowing from the inside who we are. Knowing who we are is like so connected with feeling. It's sensation in the body. It's a feeling in the heart. It's a smiling place too, because we get to know that that's who we are and that it's really okay. How do we find out who we are? There's some old guidelines on that are really cool, like show up, be present, and then again, feel your feelings. And how do we do that when we live in a culture that encourages us to be present in our mind, but not in our heart and not in that flow of energy in our body?
I have a question about that real quick.
Feelings, and then we have to tell the truth about ourselves rather than somebody else. So if we're doing something with trauma, we're talking about what happened to me, what happened to you, not what that other person's, no explanation or analysis of somebody and why they did it, or they were upset or something. No, what happened to me and what did I experience?
And let me ask you a question about feeling the feels, in a sense, what I say, and feeling those feelings. How do you take people through those steps to feel that? So you said, okay, let's access those feelings, and then to work through those feelings. What are the steps you take them through to really feel those things, and to step into that truth that you're talking about, and being able to speak your truth? What are those steps? Because that's not an easy thing to do when you really look at the truth of who you are.
You have to take the actual memory or the incidents, the actual things that happen. Say somebody was in a car accident. I'm driving along and it's a beautiful day, and all of a sudden, wham, somebody runs into me. Okay, there's a whole set of body sensations and feelings that go with that. Our first response in any kind of shocking event is not, oh gosh, why did I go out of the house today? It's different. We feel it in our gut. When we feel trauma or injury from another person emotionally, it feels like a 2x4 hit us in the gut. My job is to help a person articulate that, to know that somebody said this to me, and before they go on to anything else, I say, and what did you feel? If they say, I don't know, I say, what do you remember? What is your body telling you? What did your body feel?
Beautiful.
And then usually the feeling memory will emerge. I'm upset in my stomach right now. I can't breathe. I feel like I'm suffocating.
That's so beautiful, because what is happening when we go through trauma, we actually are reliving it over and over and over again.
Absolutely.
And then what it sounds like what you're doing is taking them through that process of confronting it head on, to say, yeah, this is what my body felt like when this happened, working through that so that they can finally pull that Band-Aid off, right? And just be able to heal from that and move forward. Because when we speak our truth, it's right smack in front of us, and we can then deal with what we need to deal with. Would you agree?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, thank you, Elizabeth. The difference between this particular process and some other things is you're kind of getting close to it when you talk, because it's like we're trying to not keep repeating the story over and over again. And the way you stop repeating that story, there's two parts to that. One is having contact, that someone is paying attention and listening and giving you feedback and being willing to say, I feel shocked, I feel hurt, I feel scared when I hear that. And the other part is putting the memory and the feeling together, along with some other factors, which is how your beliefs were violated. My father shouldn't have hit my mother. My father shouldn't have beat up my mother. There's one for you coming from a child. And then it's like, what are your strategies at that time? What did you do? I ran away and I hid. I didn't talk about it. I didn't tell anyone. That's a strategy. So
To survive,
this is a
right?
process of feeling and cognitive work that leads to a grief situation that has almost like a book with it that you can put on the shelf and say, I understand, I accept to the best of my ability, and I'm ready to go on. I'm not going to forget what happened, but I'm not going to let it just, drive my bus and be my everyday meal. I'm going to do something else now.
Because we can then start really functioning from when that happened, when the trauma occurs. We then, like you said, we retreat, we go hide. That then becomes your MO, right? It turns into something that just is the way of life for you, in a sense, a habit. And when you're able to then, and then you don't even know, you become older, decades could, occur in your life. And then you're like wondering, why do I feel this way? And you don't even remember that, but then you can remember those experiences like you're doing and bringing that out.
I want to
Elizabeth,
follow
you are
on.
so right. There's disassociation. People can live disassociated. They can go into trance. Something happens and they just kind of trance out. They can maintain habits that are not in their best interest. And as the years go by, we're farther and farther away from that core self, higher self, that authentic place that longs to live with contentment and happiness.
And
So yeah, so moving along from there, so it sounds like we just described a beginning of noticing that maybe there are stuck patterns that I've been working with forever,
Right.
and I'm interested now in starting to address them. And so, Linda, you just described a lot of really, valuable insights as it relates to that beginning process of coming into working with our trauma, what it means to do that, how we can do that, how we reorient in the face of it. And so now I want to say, as one walks down that path, I know from my own experience, it seemed like, I don't love the analogy, but it's the one that's coming in, like the layers of the onion analogy.
I use that all the
Sure.
time. But it's okay.
Yeah, right.
It's a great one.
Yeah, and so this idea of I'm working with this now. Here's this, and what I want to say to people that are beginning down that path is like each time a layer comes off, life gets better. We get more aligned, and so it's worth it. And don't be overwhelmed. And yeah. So Linda, how would you speak to kind of as one's now walking down the path of working with their trauma? What does that look like now?
My headline for that is life is an essay. Everyone has a unique essay. We all have valuable essays that we are living. So to look at our life as an essay is, I think, a very healthy thing to do. That sometimes there's a difficult chapter, and then sometimes there are really wonderful chapters. They're all okay. We have to get away from this idea that life is a true false test, or that it's a competition, and that if it's only if we win every day that everything is okay. That's not real.
So it's not just an onion; it's also an essay. Then I think that's
Right.
what you're
Well, the
saying.
onion is the essay.
different
I have no
paragraphs.
problem at all with the onion.
Okay, good.
The onion's good. It's like, but that is the essay. We have these
Sure.
different parts of the onion. We are multifaceted. We have ego. We have all these like parts of us that interact with the world. We have a professional part. We have our part when we're with our family. We have all kinds of parts of us. And then we have this other thing in us that's called like our higher self, or this eternal soul part that maybe knows everything and is always content. And that's where we want to try to tap in as often as we can with meditation or other tools.
Let me ask you a question. I know for myself that when I am able to embrace something that may not be so positive in my life, I'm able then to really receive it and then can more easily connect with my higher self. So how would you help people, in a sense, I know this might sound strange, but to, in a sense, celebrate that trauma as part of their journey, so to turn it into a good thing, in a sense?
Yes, I think that partly it goes back to all feelings fully felt, that we have to accept the laughter as well as the disappointments or anything like that, that it's all fleeting. Nothing is like there permanently. So that's part of it. The other part is that every experience we have is a part of that essay, and it's taking us somewhere else. That it's part of a journey of learning and unfolding that has a mystery to it, because we don't know sometimes why certain things happen. We have to trust that it's for the best. Is that what you mean?
Yes, I do. Yeah, definitely. And what to learn from it, right?
And
how
what to
get
learn
back.
from it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So here in a second, we're going to look at, some of the tarot and the astrology aspects of your tools. But maybe before we do, since you've been saying the word essay a fair amount, and this every feeling fully felt returns to peace, I know one of your really powerful tools that you've been trained in is writing this letter. There's a letter that I know you work with a lot of your clients, and maybe, sharing a little bit about what that process looks like, and then also what people are learning in the face of feeling the feelings through this letter writing experience.
Oh, very good question. Thank you, Daniel. Let me start with the last part. I think writing a letter is extremely validating, and a person comes to care about themselves and to be more confident when they actually go through this process. So the letter is addressed to whoever or whatever situation is the perpetration. or the perpetrator. So a letter can be written to anyone who hurt us. We just can't write to the higher power or to ourselves. You know, dear me, I was so stupid to go out that night. That's not what we're doing. And we can't put it off on God at this point. So the beauty of this process, as I was trained in, is that as we go through these steps, we end up with our own spiritual center. And the letter is the first part of that. We are actually saying to so and so, I came into work that morning believing that, you know, you were my boss and also a good friend. And 5 minutes later, you told me I was out. You ended my career. In the flash of an eye, I felt shocked, horrified, betrayed, on and on and on. This is all in the letter. Does that make sense? So it goes what happened and what you felt in a very simple way, in chronological order, without any analysis. So if someone is listening and wants to do a letter like this, it's great. Just little guideline. Don't start it with the intent of giving it to the person. Share it with someone after you've written it, because it could be that all you need to do is write it and share it. You maybe don't need to go off and give it to someone, but then again, maybe you could. Some people do. So we're going with what happened and what you felt with no analysis. So if someone tries to put in a paragraph of like, I told myself, you know, he just didn't know any better. I told myself he didn't go to finishing school, you know. No, we leave that out. We're just saying, here's what happened and here's what I felt. And not just a word of like, I felt horrified, but it can be things like I was trembling. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I was scared. You know, there's all kinds of body feelings as well.
And would you say you use the letter to be able to, one, feel those feelings, but also get it out of the person so that they can then release
Yes.
it? Is that the
It's
purpose of the
important to
letter?
get it out, but it's more than getting it out. It's connecting the left brain and the right brain, or
Right.
how we used to talk about left, right brain.
Mhm.
The memory is there. If you relive a trauma, normally you disassociate on a feeling level and a body level. So you're not really going through feelings. You're remembering. You're having flashes of what happened, and maybe you have some body sensations. But the main thing is you're remembering. The problem is in doing that, if there's no contact or no sharing and no putting together, no linking the brain up with the together into a wholeness, it will continue to happen like that. But even if you link it up and you go, okay, here's what happened, here's what I felt, that won't be enough if you don't share it to some extent. It has to be shared. Although there has been some ideas of like you can write that letter for over and over again for 3 or 4 days, and maybe that is the same as sharing because you're sharing it with yourself.
Mhm.
But in the system that I use, it's important to share with me or with somebody else.
Well, that's also, we can tie it back into in terms of the science behind really recreating new neural pathways. Whereas where you are feeling
Exactly.
it, thinking it, or sorry, let me say the opposite, thinking it, feeling it. And then when you say sharing, that in a sense is the action taking where you then can create new things. So
That's right.
I love
That's
that
right.
you're using science as part of this as well.
Yes,
Now,
that's true.
you also do use tarot as well as astrology. Tell us a little
Right.
bit about how you integrate those in your practice when you're working with your clients.
Yes, thank you. Astrology is just a fabulous tool for self understanding. We don't know why it works, and we don't have time to go into all of that, but it helps people feel validated. So when you have a birth chart, we really come away going like, well, you didn't really tell me what I don't know, but you told me what I know and what other people don't always know about me. But it's sort of a validation. And also later then it can help too with timing or understanding why you're blocked or why things you're going through a hard time. Sometimes there are things in the transiting chart that help us understand that this isn't forever, or it is a big transformation and it's an opportunity. And, it's going to take us somewhere important. So that's part of the astrology. tarot is a whole other thing. You know, in the old days, it was like go to the fortune teller. Nowadays, tarot is like, you know, it's just one part of like this whole array of visual imagery that helps us tap in to our real self, to our higher self, to that eternal soul self. And pictures do it so quickly. So people see an image and they have a feeling about that. And maybe they go, oh, that reminds me that I'm going on this trip. And look, there's that picture and it tells me I made the right choice. I should go on this trip. So again, it's like helping somebody get connected with their inside and not always being dependent on who am I based on the outside.
I do have a question real quick about that real quick. In terms of the tarot, that can be kind of a foreign thing to certain people. They're like, they might be a little resistant to that. For myself, like you said, the imagery, for me, when I see that type of thing, I see it as those messages from God that are coming to me in different forms.
Yes.
How would you address, I see it all like that, you know, all these different ways of gaining that information, gaining those insights into me, into my past, into my soul. They just are coming in different forms, but they're still, in a sense, for me personally, messages from God. So how would you address that with someone who might be like a little
they're
resistant to
messages
that?
from your higher self. There's nothing to fear. I think the more we get connected with ourselves, the more receptive we are to visual imagery. It's just maybe someone who hasn't had enough exposure to it, who might be put off by it or think it's fortune telling or something. To me, using cards or oracle images or anything is about helping another person get in touch with themselves. What they see and think about it, the picture is more important than what I see. Although I'm happy to help, I think that's what's important so that they can feel a connection to something beyond, you know, just this immediate moment.
So in this context, basically people are seeing an image and then they're using that as a reflection so that they can have access to what's important to them, or maybe some guidance or something to that effect. We have just a couple more minutes left. You know, we promised the 3 keys to aligning with our higher self, and Linda, I know that you have that to share. So let's go ahead and go into that area. And if you want to just start going through that, and I know a lot of them we've covered, but let's go ahead and hear that.
I think the first thing, I'm phrasing it more as what we want, that number one, we do want to know ourselves and we long to be connected with what I'm calling this eternal soul part of us. That's like fundamental. Trauma interferes with that, so it's bigger than just everyday life. But that's the main thing. We want to know who we are. Second, we want to always be healing the past so that we can live in the present. And third, we want to feel empowered. We want to be confident. We want to feel like we're living from that whole place in ourselves and not just from the ego. The ego feels fear. The ego feels a lot of things that don't matter. But the real self is driving. We want the real self to drive the bus. So that's what I would want. Those would be the 3 things that I would want for anyone: to know themselves, to heal and live in the present, and to feel empowered about driving their own life.
I love that. I mean, and just think about if everyone were to go through that process, how
great.
different our lives would be, how different the world would be. So thank you so much for these beautiful insights that we can definitely take on as our, into our lives. And thank you so much for this time that you've given us.
Yeah, Linda.
Thank you.
Linda, I'm just extremely grateful to bring you on Everyday Resonance and get to share your deep wisdom with the audience out there. I want to remind the audience that, if you're going through any sort of medical condition or psychological condition, see a certified practitioner. And, of course, Linda is a coach. She's a soul coach, so she works with a range of different people through trauma. But yet it's always good to go and seek out professional help,
Absolutely.
if you're facing a psychological condition or anything that you could describe as that. And so just extremely grateful to be here with you, Linda, with Elizabeth today, with Ziggy, our producer over here, doing such a great job of helping bring the show into the world in such a beautiful way. So every day, Make sure to tune into yourself, tune into that resonance. What are you bringing into the world today? And what parts of that do you feel in alignment with? And what parts do you want to maybe line up a little bit differently? Maybe so you can bring your higher self into the world better. Every day, align with your resonance. And on Wednesdays at noon Central, tune into Everyday Resonance. We're on Facebook Live. If you go to Facebook and type in Everyday Resonance, we're on YouTube. We are on iTunes. And we're also really grateful to be distributed by iHeartRadio. Thank you so
And
much,
Spotify
Elizabeth.
too, right?
On Spotify as well. That's correct. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. Looking forward to next week. Thank you.
See you later. Bye-bye.
Everyday Resonance was brought to you by Priya Patel and Sunshine Global Ventures.
To sponsor Everyday Resonance, please contact everydayresonance@gmail.com.